Court is in session and cause number 327957. The case is styled the state of Texas versus Pamela Neal. Let the record reflect that the jury is not present in the courtroom. However, Miss Neal, she's sitting in the hallway. You wanted to come in?
Not
Okay.
what he's gonna know.
And Miss Neal's attorney, Mr. John West, is present in the courtroom. We also have present Assistant District Attorney Ray Shearer and Assistant District Attorney Blake Ham. Mr. Ham, you have an announcement you'd like to make for the court, or?
Yes, Your Honor. Just wanted to advise the court beforehand that I have two and possibly three witnesses. Two witnesses are Beaumont police officers, an Officer Garcia and an Officer Hanley. Officer Hanley is also testifying in the punishment phase of a murder trial in the 252nd.
Okay.
So I may be able to start with him. I anticipate beginning, my third witness is a pharmacist. So if there may be some shuffling of the witnesses based on schedules,
Okay.
is really what I wanted
Okay.
the court to be aware of.
Okay.
And because
You can call them in
circumstances
whatever,
they are.
order you'd like to call them in.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, let me ask you this here.
Yes, Your Honor.
We had 5 jurors that was present so far. So we have 2 is not here yet. So we're gonna wait, see if maybe go back out there and call them in another. Just once you go back out there right now, since it's 1:30, they may have showed up exactly at 1:30. We'll see.
And if the pharmacist arrives, Your Honor, I may even, if we start with Garcia, I may have to pause him to get the pharmacist in and then restart.
They're all here now.
They are? Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
State, you ready?
Yes, Your Honor, stage ready.
Mr. West, you can get your client. Mr. West, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
everything you brought into this trial, all of your experiences. What do you observe? What do you hear? And what do you see? Evidence. When I was in a little baby lawyer school, they told us to tell you evidence is like a puzzle. Right? It's a bunch of different pieces. It may not all come in chronological order. Right? You may see this and then that. You're going to hear from this witness and that witness, and they're all going to be pieces of a puzzle that you're going to need to put together at the end to see if you can form the whole picture. And that's how it's going to be in this case. Regardless, I'm convinced, and I'm hopeful that at the end of this trial, you'll be as convinced as I am that after you've seen the evidence presented, you'll agree that Ms. Neal is guilty of the crime that she's been charged with. Now, the trial is going to be in 2 phases. It's my understanding that the defense has elected the jury to assess the punishment in this case. So the first phase is guilt or innocence. 6 jurors, alternate, if you have to come into play, you're going to, vote, is she guilty or innocent of what she's been charged with. If she is found guilty, then we will proceed to a punishment phase. And at that point in time, you get to decide what her punishment is. But right now, we're in guilt or innocence. So I'm going to ask you, put punishment aside for the moment. You're going to get to decide that if you find her guilty. Okay? Just concentrate. Does the evidence prove beyond any reasonable doubt that she is guilty of driving a motor vehicle in Jefferson County, Texas while intoxicated? Thank you.
Mr. West?
Hang on. Mr. Ham mentioned puzzle pieces. That's what you're going to get today. Kind of going back to the scenario in the void hour, talking about the frying pan in the dark room, and the Indiana Jones example. You're going to get the frying pan, and you're going to get the bad guy knocked out laying on the ground with a knife. And you're in a dark room, and he's going to actually put it all together to say what happened. They're going to want you to look at all these bits and pieces of evidence, these puzzle pieces, and say, my client's intoxicated. Well, she's probably intoxicated because of all of this stuff. I just want you to hold true to what we talked about in void hour, what you took oath to. It's not probably. It's going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Take all these pieces together, look at it, and do they all establish she's intoxicated? I'm going to surmise to you that they don't. These are just bits and pieces or puzzles, and it's just an officer making an assumption based on what he saw and not really what the evidence shows.
Mr. Ham, you'd like to call your first witness?
Okay. Yes, John. They call Brigham. Ham.
Could you,
Oh, I'll switch back. Yes, John.
yes, stand on it. Would you please state your full name?
Gregory Keith Hamby.
Hamby?
Hamby, yes, sir.
Okay, Hamby?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I see it on your shirt.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hamby, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Hamby, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may have a seat. The mic cover. You already changed it.
Darren, may I proceed?
Yes, Mr. Ham, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ham.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Blake Ham, and we spoke briefly on the phone earlier this morning.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to thank you for coming on such short notice. Could you please just take a minute to introduce yourself to the jury and tell them what your profession is?
My name is Greg Canby. I am the owner and pharmacist in charge of Queen's Pharmacy in Beaumont, Texas. I earned my undergraduate degree from the University of Houston in 1990. I earned my doctorate from the University of Florida in 2002. And I have worked in 20 years in hospital pharmacy and the last 14 in retail pharmacy at King's Pharmacy in Beaumont.
Thank you very much. Have we met before?
No, sir.
No, just on the phone this morning, right?
Correct.
And could you please tell the jury what it is that, just in general, what does a pharmacist do?
Well, in terms of retail pharmacy, and I assume that's the discussion that we're having today, we are responsible for taking, dispensing, maintaining medications in a controlled setting. We're also responsible for the dispensing process of those medications to the patients that we're responsible for. In that role, we serve as a counselor in regards to what the medications do for the patient, how they're supposed to take them, when they're supposed to take them, how they're supposed to store them, if they have problems with them, how they should proceed forward, and who they should contact in that regard. And over a long period of time, you develop a profile and you kind of help patients oversee that profile. So that's a pretty simplified version of it. But
Thank you. And as part of your extensive training, were you trained in the various types of drugs and their effects on human beings?
yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you about 3 different drugs that are issued in this case.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, do you know defense counsel or the defendant?
No, sir.
Okay. Never met them before in your life, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with the drug lorazepam?
Yes, sir.
What type of drug is that?
Lorazepam, brand name is Ativan. It fits in the class of drugs called benzodiazepines. Those drugs can be used as anti-anxiety, anxiolytics. It can also be used as sedative hypnotics to help people sleep or maintain sleep patterns.
And what are the typical side effects on a human being when they take lorazepam?
Sedation, drowsiness, weakness, weariness, any of those things would be described as typical responses to the medication.
And when a pharmacy distributes lorazepam to people, does it come with any warnings?
It does come with warnings. We're responsible whenever we dispense any new medication to a patient to have a discussion about what the drug does, why it's being prescribed, to make sure that the triangle of physician, pharmacist, patient is on the same page, and make sure that there's not a danger or an inaccuracy in that regard. So we would talk about the fact that this is being prescribed on whatever frequency it might be, once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, only at bedtime. Some of the things that they might experience with the drugs that they're already currently taking that they might be cautious about in that regard. And for lorazepam, it would be, number one, be careful whenever you take it, as a, can make you drowsy. So don't take it in a time whenever you would need to be alert. And number 2, the other medications that it might go along with, as well as one of the principal interactions that we see with a lot of these central nervous system depressants is an interaction with alcohol, to avoid that.
When lorazepam is distributed to a patient from a pharmacy, does it come with any warnings about driving?
Yes, sir. There's we call them auxiliary labels that often are placed on the label. And I can't speak for the practice of every pharmacy, but that is commonly a part of the label whether it's printed or whether it's added as an auxiliary label to the prescription bottle.
And what would that auxiliary label say about using lorazepam to drive?
Use precaution when driving or operating heavy machinery and the aforementioned alcohol interaction.
Thank you. I want to move on to a second drug. You heard of a drug called Seroquel.
Yes, sir.
And what is that drug?
Seroquel is used principally in, there's a lot of indications in which this medication is used, but I'm going to call it an antipsychotic as a class of drugs. It's also used for other things, but that's its principle, or that was its original classification as an antipsychotic.
Yes, sir. What are the typical side effects that Seroquel might have on someone when they take it?
Drowsiness, CNS depression, central nervous system depressive. That's the thing that we often see happening with it, people that are using it for whatever indication it might be. It's also used lots of times as a sedative hypnotic to help people go to sleep at a lower dose. At the higher doses, of course, that intensifies and you can see other things happen with it at that point in time.
Does Seroquel come with the same auxiliary type warnings as lorazepam with respect to driving?
There is the same precaution, yes, sir.
Let me ask you about one last one. Have you ever heard of a drug called clonidine?
Yes, sir.
And what type of drug is clonidine?
It is a medication that's often used for its central nervous system suppressant activities. Its principal indication is blood pressure. Whenever we see it used, most often it uses a blood pressure. However, it can be used in ADHD to dampen the neurologic system. So it also has the same type of precautions that you would see. It also can be used at bedtime to assist in the wake-sleep cycle.
Does clonidine, does it have a similar auxiliary warning about driving as the other two?
It would probably not be its principal, but it could be, yes, sir.
Let me ask you this last line of questioning here. If an individual, what would be the effect if an individual was on all three of these drugs at the same time?
Well, not to oversimplify it, because someone who had been taking all three medications for an extended period of time would have developed some degree of adaptation to the effects of these drugs. In the initial phase of all three drugs, or let's say we started all three drugs together at one point in time, of course, the principal thing that you're going to see is sedation and drowsiness and lethargy and weakness and dizziness, and all of those types of things would be your principal effect.
Mr. Hamby, again, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out of your workday to come here and testify at this trial.
Yes, sir.
I very much appreciate it. I'm going to pass it.
Mr. West, the witness is yours.
That's actually a couple of questions. If you don't understand, just let me know. We'll rephrase and try to make sure you understand. Regarding the lorazepam, how long does it take for the side effects to wear off?
The half-life of the drug is about 30 minutes. So this is a very subjective question, so I can't give a specific. It's going to be somewhere around the 6-hour mark.
And more importantly, it kind of affects everybody a little differently, because you said earlier that somebody that's on them for a long period of time, they I guess, build up a resistance to it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's one way to describe it.
So different people would react different ways, but this is not something that's, it does wear off.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know, and I know the answer to this, but do you know if Ms. Neal took lorazepam that day?
Not sure.
And the Seroquel, same questions. How long does that take off? Or how long does that take to wear off?
Significantly longer. It's going to be anywhere from 12 to 18 hours, even 24 hours. If there's a different dosage form of Seroquel, which again, I have no knowledge of what was taken. One is an immediate release. One is, it's called XR, which stands for extended release. And it's a 24-hour release mechanism. So in that case,
Okay. So again, my big question is, you don't know if Ms. Neal took that drug, do you?
that's right.
Okay, and you don't know which of the drugs, the version she took.
No, sir.
Okay. And the same thing with the clonidine. About how long does it take to wear off?
3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
You start to lose it back.
And the same question, you don't know if Ms. Neal took those medications.
No, sir.
And also, you don't know how long, if she had been taking them, how long she'd been taking those, how many months, years, you have no idea.
No, sir.
Okay. And then last question about these 3 drugs that we have here, are they illegal drugs?
No, sir.
Okay. They're controlled substances, right?
No, sir. There is one drug that you're referring to that fits in a controlled substance category, which is lorazepam.
Okay.
Seroquel, clonidine, neither are.
Okay. All right. And what I'm getting at is that they're not illegal drugs, but you have a prescription, you don't.
There are all legend, yes, sir.
That's what it is.
No further questions.
Okay. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. West?
No objection.
Okay. Mr. Hamby, you're excused. You can please step down and follow the bailiff. And thanks for coming, and you have a blessed day.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Ham, you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this point in time, the state would like to offer what its marked is State's Exhibit 1, which is a copy of the 911 call in this case.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, no objections. State's exhibit number 1 is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish it to the jury?
Yes.
Thank you.
Police, how can I help you?
Hello.
Hello, this is Vermont Police.
Yeah, can you send someone out? I'm over here at these, what's the name of these apartments? Someone just came circling around in the apartment, you know what I'm saying? They done ran into my truck. They seem like they drunk and then they called, and I'm trying to pull off and leave, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, where are you?
What is this address?
No. 90510.
Hold on, just. Yeah, you heard it?
You're at 905 campus. What's the apartment number?
We're going to remodeling over here, you know what I'm saying? We're working over here.
Okay.
And my truck is parked in the parking lot. And, they just pulled through the parking lot, you know, down, they just trying to turn around.
Do you have the plate on the vehicle that hit you first?
Right, ACH 5733.
5733. What was it? HHH?
A-B-7.
Are you saying A as an apple or the number 8?
A as in apple.
Okay.
B as in cat.
7?
5733.
Okay, and what is your name, sir?
Leon Miles.
And are they still there? Sir, can you talk to me? Can you talk to me and let me know what's going on? Are the people that still, they hit your car, are they still there?
Yes, ma'am, they did. I got her car key, you know what I'm saying? I got her car key because she was trying to pull off.
You took her car keys? Sir, what kind of car are you in?
I'm driving a 2500 GMP truck. And we got another guy who's been saying that it's his brother's truck, you know what I'm saying? So someone that's driving it. And I don't know.
Okay, we got the car, sir, we're gonna send someone out.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And please, court, state will call Officer Felipe Garcia.
Felipe Garcia.
Yeah.
Officer Garcia, would you please raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Officer Garcia, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr. Garcia, you may put your hand down. You have a seat in the witness stand, and you can adjust the chair. And then you could also adjust the mic. Mr. Ham, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Officer Garcia.
Good afternoon.
So we're here about an incident that occurred on July 29th, 2020. Are you familiar with why we're here?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. And before we get into it, just take a minute, introduce yourself to the jury, tell them what your job is, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Felipe Garcia. I'm a patrol officer with Beaumont PD, and I've worked there approximately 13 years.
So, Officer Garcia, do you recall a call out you had on or about July 29th, 2020 regarding a DWI investigation?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And the individual who is the subject of that investigation, do you see that individual in this room?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, could you please identify her by an item of her clothing?
Blue dress.
Your Honor, please let the record reflect that Officer Garcia is identified as defendant.
The record will still reflect.
Okay, and did this call out, did this occur here in Beaumont?
Yes, sir, it did.
Is that in Jefferson County, Texas?
Yes.
Thank you. So tell the jury why you were called to this incident.
So the officers that were there, one of which was Officer Hanley, he was called as the responding officer at first, and then he contacted me by my city cell phone saying that he was out on a vehicle accident and possibly one of the drivers in the accident was possibly intoxicated. So he called for my assistance.
Why would he need your assistance with a DWI investigation?
I've done several DWIs, and that's one of the things that I'm good at, very good at. So I offer my assistance to any patrol officer, whether they're not comfortable in doing DWIs or, you know, in this case, it was a vehicle accident on top of a DWI. So that way we can divide different priorities. So they take care of one part, I handle the other part. So he called for my assistance in a possible DWI investigation.
What training did you have for the response to driving while intoxicated investigations?
Well, I completed the police academy at LIT. I believe I graduated in January of '09. And then, so we had the DWI course right out of in the academy. I've had several, we call them refresher courses for the standardized field sobriety test. I've had a few of those, and I've also taken what's called the ARIDE course, which stands for Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, which that is, it's a stepping stone where it introduces officers to the 7 drug categories. So first, you got your standardized field sobriety test, which most of us are capable of doing. And then you have the ARIDE course. And then after that, which is more advanced, it's called the drug recognition expert. So it's a stepping stone between the sobriety test that we can do and then a full-on drug recognition expert.
So you mentioned the term SFSTs or standard field sobriety tests.
Yes, sir.
Could you just explain to the jury what those are briefly?
So it's, the standardized field sobriety test, it's 3 tasks that we ask an individual, or in other words, the suspect, to perform. One of which is we're checking, it's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus, the HGN, which is where we check their eyes to see if they're bouncing, and if somebody is intoxicated, it's involuntary movement of the eyes when they're to their side. Another test is the walk and turn, where we're asking them to walk a straight line. Somebody that is inebriated on either alcohol or some other substance, we see how they do when they're walking the line. And then the last sobriety test that we have them do is if they can stand on one of their legs for approximately 30 seconds. And again, if somebody is inebriated on some type of substance, most likely they're not going to be able to hold their foot up for those 30 seconds without putting it down or hopping.
And what is the purpose of these tests?
Based on, so what I tell the suspect is it's not a pass or fail test. It's a combination on clues that I'm looking for. And if I see enough of those clues, it leads me to believe they're intoxicated, where they're at least over the legal limit. Once I see those clues, if I see them at all, when they're performing them.
And are these tests typically performed on a DWI investigation?
Typically, yes, but not always.
What would be some reasons why you would respond to a DWI investigation but not perform these tests?
Probably the biggest reason of why I wouldn't have the person perform the standardized field sobriety test is because they're so intoxicated to the point where if I try and have them perform them, it's going to endanger them physically. So that's one of, if not the biggest reason of why I wouldn't have them perform the sobriety test.
Okay, let me switch just a minute. You had also discussed this course, this extra course you took called ARIDE.
Yes, sir.
ARIDE, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Who put that course on?
I believe it was some instructors from Sam Houston State University. It was a grant through, I believe, TxDOT.
Now, what is the difference primarily? I don't want to go through, I want to teach the whole course to the jurors, but what is the primary difference between your standard DWI training and this ARIDE course?
Once again, the ARIDE course, it touches up on the 7 drug categories, which the sobriety, the SFST does not. It's just the 3 sobriety tests. So it touches on the 7 drug categories.
Okay, 7 drug categories.
Yes, sir.
What are those?
I have, if I could, I have this is the ARIDE, one of the things that they provided for in the course. So the 7 drug categories are hallucinogens, narcotic analgesics, inhalants, central nervous system depressants, central nervous system stimulants, cannabis, and lastly, dissociative anesthetics.
Okay, and what all, just don't read the card to the jury, please.
Yes, sir.
Just tell them generally what information is on this card you're looking at.
So it gives you So based on what they're on, what substance they're on, it's like a bar graph. It tells you what symptoms you will see in the suspect if they're on a specific drug.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, you may approach.
Officer Garcia, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit Number 2. You know what this is?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It is the camera footage from my body camera
When?
on this incident.
On this incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you reviewed that footage?
Yes, sir, I have.
And when that footage was taken, what was it taken with?
It was taken from my body cam, which I'm currently wearing, which is this. It's issued by the department.
And at the time this footage was taken, was your body cam in functioning order?
Yes, sir, it was.
Were you capable of operating your body camera at the time?
Yes, sir.
And you said you reviewed this, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. When you reviewed it, did the events on this footage fairly and accurately depict the events you saw at the time?
Yes, sir, it does.
You know, stay with all for State's Exhibit.
Mr. West?
No objection.
Okay, no objections. That's State's Exhibit Number 2.
State's Exhibit 2.
Okay, State's number 2 is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. While we're doing this, Officer Garcia, you weren't the first on the scene, right?
No, sir, I wasn't. Okay.
And Officer Garcia, does the sound start right away?
No, I believe it takes maybe 15 seconds or 30 seconds from when I activate it to when the time it starts recording the audio. So it records video, but not audio until I actually activate it.
Well, it's not showing it.
Is it
I
loose?
don't know what's going on.
It must be loose.
Uh-huh. Let me try it this way. Yeah, some technical difficulties over here.
Okay.
In the suburban? Right.
Try to unplug it. Yeah. I'll take a short recess to get this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. Stand and follow the bailiff into the hall.